Welcome to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, brought to you by Riverside Auto Group and produced by WLAQ Sports. Each week, we bring you insight, analysis, interviews, and our predictions for the week's matchups around the Northwest Georgia area. Here are your hosts.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. So glad to have you with us. We're glad to be here to talk about another slate of high school football games, this time for Week 5. Man, how do we get to Week 5 already, Ian?
It goes by in a flash. That's just the way it is. We wait for it all year, and then before you know it, it's Christmas.
And I don't know how well you can see it on our screen, but we wanted, in an effort to send some good vibes over to our friends at Advent Health Stadium getting prepared for playoff baseball. We've got Golden Julius in the studio with us today, and then we also have Bobby Moore, and his bobblehead to try to send those vibes over, because big playoff game coming up this afternoon if you happen to be watching this when it airs live on Thursdays.
Absolutely. Let's pack out Advent Health Stadium and go support the Imps.
That's right. They're having a whiteout today. I want you to be there, be loud, be proud, and root on this team and feed them some energy. And I would imagine that over here on the other side of the table, you're going to be there, aren't you?
Yeah, I work there, so, I kind of got to be there. I can be supportive as much as I can, but, I can't, just randomly scream in the middle of the game. So
yeah, well, when you're throwing out T-shirts and things of that nature, you can get excited, right?
You can get a little excited, but, you always got to keep it a little professional, especially in a work environment. So
I like that, man. He's listening to all the things that everybody's trying to teach him.
He says keep it professional, but he's wearing a Georgia and a Duke and a Lakers shirt last week. He's finally wearing something I can get behind here.
You should see the shirt I came in Tuesday. I think I just showed it to you in Kirby Smart. We trust. So
I would trust that guy too. So
the envy of most programs out there love to have Kirby Smart as their head honcho,
especially Florida right now.
Oh boy.
Man, he's
taking shots.
Hard digs
here in Week 5.
Hard digs.
I mean, my goodness. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to flip to the other side of the table once again. He's got on his big blue basketball shirt. And I know that last week you were up at Tryon with the Model Blue Devils. They jumped out to a lead in that game. Tell us a bit about what you saw from the Blue Devils and Tryon last week, Grayson.
Yeah, so in that game, after the first quarter, I believe Tryon had 3 turnovers in that first quarter. Model was up either 9-0 or 12-0 at the end of that quarter. I remember one of the first plays of the game, Tryon was on offense, and they threw a screen pass, but from where I was standing, it looked incomplete, but the refs ruled it a fumble, and it was a scoop and score. So Model was up 6-0. The kicker missed the PAT, and then Tryon turned it over again off a tip drill, and then they fumbled again, and Model was able to get 2 field goals in the span of that time. And then in the second half, it was all Tryon. They threw a lot of seam passes down the middle. Cade Smith, just crazy passing game overall. They had an amazing running game. They were just able to score 22 unanswered points on the Model defense. And so even though, you let up that many unanswered points, there are still a lot of positives to take away from that game. And one of the biggest learning points is how can Coach Honeycutt evaluate his squad to be able to pull off some of those games in the end, especially now when you see that they let up 22 points, just going what they could go over in practice to be able to finish out some of these games, especially come region play, because there are a lot of tough teams in 7A-D1.
All right, thank you very much, Grayson. Of course, other teams, and the Model is off this week. Other teams that are off: Adairsville Tigers, who have had a good season so far. The Pepperell Dragons, they had a tough week last week playing against Cedartown, and I think what most people thought would happen in that game did. No reason to hang their heads on that one. I heard it was a great effort from the Dragons. Still trying to get things on track, find that identity, put things together. It's hard to do when you're playing a team like Cedartown.
Yeah. They've been close in their other efforts, but Cedartown is an absolute steamroller right now.
They really are. So that kind of goes over a couple of those things. But basically what we're going to do today, it's going to be a little bit different. And the reason for that is most teams are opening up region play this week. I didn't quite realize that we were already at that point until after I already put together the schedule. And I'm like, wait a minute. only two of the 10 games that we're going to talk about today are non-region tilts. The rest of them are region play. So we're going to organize it as such as we move along today. So real quick, we'll run down the list of games that we're going to be previewing and talking about. We'll start with the non-region games. It's going to be Whitfield Academy Wolfpack at Darlington Tigers. You've got Calhoun Yellow Jackets going up against the Cambridge Bears on the road. Then we'll shift into 7A D1, talk about Almerchi at Gordon Lee, Fannin County at Coosa, Chattooga Indians going over to Gordon Central to take on the Warriors. You've got the Dade County Wolverines at Christian Heritage against the Lions. Then we'll move into 7AA, talk about one game there. It's the Union County Panthers going down to the Rock to play Rockmart. We'll shift over to 5A, where the East Paulding Raiders will be playing at Barron Stadium against the Rome Wolves. Then we'll have two games we talk about in 7-4A. That will be the Allatoona Buccaneers at Cedartown Bulldogs. And then, Ian, tell us which game we picked to highlight as a game of the week this week.
Yeah, super excited to hear from both of these coaches later in the show. Great interviews that Matt and I had conducted. But we're gonna talk about the Hiram Hornets going to Cass to play the Colonels. Man, that is going to be a showdown. You look at the records. Hiram 1-3, but they have played a brutal schedule. Cass hasn't played a light schedule, and they're 3-1. So it's going to be it's big time. But you throw the records out the window. This time definitely. Of year, it's region play for the most part, at least. So this is where the rubber meets the road.
Excited about talking about that. Well, we'll just go ahead and talk about the two non-region games in this segment, and then we'll take a break. We'll start with Whitfield Academy Wolfpack at Darlington Tigers. Ian, last week, Darlington had a bye week before. We were up at Ridgeland with the Darlington Tigers. They were exercising demons. They won that game 49-7. Bodie Powers had his first two varsity high school football touchdowns. Miles Twyman was our honeymoon bakery icing on the cake player of the game, had 3 TDs. Trenton Moore had a touchdown catch. Jace Donaldson, I believe, had a touchdown as well. So lots of guys involved in the offense. There were a lot of great defensive plays as well. So, what did you think about that game and where that puts the Tigers now in terms of trying to keep things headed in the right direction?
Well, after a frustrating start, and not because there wasn't great effort, to be 0-2, it meant the world to this Tigers team to get the win, especially going into a bye week. We know Coach Groves doesn't like bye weeks at all, but you don't want to go into a bye week with a loss because then you're just festering over what went wrong. So to take something positive from that is huge for the Tigers' confidence going forward. But look, what we saw against Ridgeland, and yes, this is a Ridgeland program that struggled, but this is also a higher classification school, a proud program. And to go on the road, face a rain delay like they did once again, second time this season that's happened, and go out and take care of business. I think that the Tigers can grow from that, and they've got one more chance to learn a little bit more before they enter region play against a team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year. And they're hungry.
They are, very much so. And obviously Coach Groves, pointed that out in our Coach Groves show yesterday. So there should be a lot of fireworks in this game, a lot of intensity. I'm really looking forward to being over at Chris Hunter Stadium for this game coming up Friday night.
Yeah, I think, like you say, I think they'll keep the main thing. It'll be about playing a clean game, making Whitfield do everything they have to do to beat them, and the Tigers will try not to beat themselves. If they do that, they're going to have a chance to win every game.
Not picking it because we're broadcasting it, but we'll shift over to the other side of the table and get Grayson's take on this one. Any comments you want to make before we move to the next game?
Even though, I got to call one Darlington game and I got to see, a little bit of what they've been able to do. It's a feisty team, and the only comment I'm really going to make is the fact that Coach Groves, he wants some revenge from last year. So I think this will be a good test for Darlington before they go in to region play.
It's going to be definitely a great effort. We're looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. Next game that's on the list, we will be picking. This one's really an interesting one. Who wants to tee up the Calhoun Yellow Jackets and Cambridge Bears and tell us a little bit about that one?
Let's kick it to the kid.
Okay.
All right.
We're going to put him on the spot.
So one of the things that I noticed was Cambridge, they're in a higher class, and they are actually undefeated on the season. And something else that really caught my eye was that the team that Calhoun lost to earlier in the season, Creekview, Cambridge spanked them 39-0. That was a very lopsided game. And Calhoun, of course, they just lost to Cartersville. And Cartersville, they're one of the top teams of 4A. They probably have chances are one of the top fastest receiver groups in the state. Brady Marchese, he hits 21 miles an hour consistently, so they just had their hands full in that game. And I believe Amari Winston was out in that game, so that was another just takeaway from that game. Things didn't really go Calhoun's way. But Cambridge, they're undefeated on the season. Of course, we mentioned 4-0. They beat Creekview 39-0. Just looking at that score, I mean, it's hard for me to take Calhoun this one. So I'm gonna have to go with Cambridge. Just that 39-0 whooping they gave Creekview, who Kevin lost to. It's just too much for me. Give me Cambridge.
Ian,
Oh
do you
man,
agree?
Kid's taking the words right out of my mouth here. It's hard to look past the fact that they shut out and dominated a team that went to the Reeve and won too, right? I believe that game
No,
was
they
at
were
the
they were
Reeve.
in Creekview.
Was it at Creekview? Okay. Still impressive. Hard to look past. Bottom line here is that this Cambridge team hasn't only beaten that Creekview team, they've also gone out and dominated opponents like Pope, Johns Creek, some proud programs. The games haven't been close. They did have a close game against Denmark last week in overtime throw, but that's a good program too. So they've won big and they've learned how to win close. I got to take Cambridge at home.
I won't leave any suspense there. I'm going with Cambridge as well. We saw the struggles that Calhoun had offensively. Yes, it hurt not having Amari Winston. I think they had another couple guys out for that game. I'm not sure what their status is going in. If you get some of those guys back, it's going to help. And I think that Calhoun's going to have some success this year. But you guys pointed out this Cambridge team is still a relatively new program, but they made a statement right away that they were serious about football. They've been a playoff team last 4 seasons, second-round team 3 of those 4 years. Got a new coach this year. He's got these guys 4-0 after what Craig Bennett built for 12 seasons, being the first coach there. Cupboard was not bare when he came in and took over the program, so we all agree on this one. We're all going with the Cambridge Bears. All right, that brings us up to our first break here of the program. We're going to take it. When we come back, we're going to shift into 7A Division I and talk about 4 games there kind of quickly. And we've got a lot left to do on this show, so we're going to go ahead and get to that break. We'll be right back. This is This Week in Northwest Georgia Football.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We're glad to have the WLA crew tuned in and ready to roll. Oh, it is a thing. It is a thing. We're glad to have you with us as we bring you this week's edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We're going to jump into some 7A Division I action. We've got a good slate of games. Matt, what's the first one on the list?
Well, the first one that we're going to talk about, Ian, is going to be the Almerchi Indians. 3-0 Almerchi Indians going up to Gordon Lee to take on the Trojans, a team that's 2-1, playing in the same region this year. Series history-wise, Gordon Lee leads it, but it's been close, 25-21, and 1 tie out of those years. The last one, the Trojans won it. It was last season, 34-21. And you want to take the first pick here, Grayson, of this one?
Sure,
All
why
right,
not?
We'll turn it over to you.
So these two teams, they've been able to split a decent amount the past few years. I believe Armerchi beat them 2 years ago. Yes, Armerchi's undefeated. We've seen this before. They went 4-0 to begin the season, and then they missed the playoffs. So I'm not saying there's a little bit of, I guess you could say, skepticism from anybody for Armerchi because it's a new year, but I'm just putting it out there that we've seen it before. Gordon Lee, 1 loss. They went up. They played Tryon, and they lost 30-6 in that game, I believe. But I would argue that some of Gordon Lee's wins weigh a little bit more than Armerchi's. And Gordon Lee, of course, they've been able to have a lot of success over the past few seasons. So just based on the eye test, Armurchie's 3-0, Gordon Lee's 2-1, but I'm going to have to take Gordon Lee in this one no matter what the eye test says. They're a powerhouse, and they've been able to find success, and I just think that Armurchie's going to drop this region game to begin the season.
Ian, do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I'm gonna dice it up before I reveal what I'm thinking about this game. Let's give Armurchie some credit. Now, you said we've seen this before at 4-0. We hadn't seen that before in a long time, before last year. So the winning culture at Armurchie that started back when Coach Green was there, and now that Blue has taken over, these guys are starting to win some games. I think we'll find out if they have a chance to really be special in this game, though, because we know they've got a hard work ethic, and I think they have a legitimate chance to pull off this win. But at this stage in the season, we've got to compare who's played who. And when you look at Gordon Lee, they beat Heritage Catoosa by 10. Heritage of Catoosa drubbed Christian Heritage 42-17. That's a team that just beat Pepperell. So you kind of have to play that little guessing game, and with this game being at Gordon Lee, that's the key factor to me. The only reason I'm picking the Trojans is because it's a road game. I think it's close, and I hope the Indians can pull it off.
I think this is an opportunity, obviously, to get region started off with a win. And the other thing, I think for Armurchie, it's a measuring stick game. I see it as that because when you look at their non-region schedule, it featured matchups that gave them an opportunity to build confidence, grab some early momentum, and now can you take that into region play and have that translate to going up against a team that I think is going to be more competitive than what they've seen and get that in the win column. And that'll be a step forward, I think, for this program, which we're going to find out if they're ready to take. There's no doubt I'm rooting for the Indians, but as you mentioned, the Trojans get this one at home, and they're going to throw some things at Armurchie offensively that their defense is going to have to adjust to in terms of some of their speed and playmakers. And you're looking at a team that just picked up an upset over Heritage, so they've got a lot of confidence, this Gordon Lee team does. So I personally don't think that bodes well here. I don't think they're going to take Armurchie lightly. We'll be prepared for this game. I could see it going either way, but I'm going with the home team. I'm going with Gordon Lee. Next game on the list is going to be the Fannin County Rebels playing at Coosa Branch Bragg Field. A lot of excitement with this Coosa program at 2-1. Fannin County comes in 3-0. Ian, let's start with you for this particular one.
Yeah. Well, we've had to slowly digest Fannin County Rebels being a part of our conversation these last few years. Didn't know much about the Rebels at all until they wandered into the old 7AA that we talked about a few years back, and they have been a factor since they've shown up. So 3-0 coming to Branch Bragg Field, as you mentioned, but look at Fannin County's wins. They've got wins over Gilmer, Rabun County, Union County, not that impressive. But those first two, Gilmer and Rabun, those are some good teams, and they didn't just beat them. They won every game by at least 14 points. Coosa's only loss came to Model in a hard-fought game. Game's at home, but I'm taking the road team here. I think the Rebels get the win.
I'm going to agree with you on this one. When you look at Fannin, they dropped off a little bit the last couple of years, but they were still extremely competitive in most of their games. They've been a playoff team the last 6 seasons, built a reputation for that explosive offense that they have. They can score a lot of points. When you look at this Coosa team, the hallmarks of that team, they have some speed, and they are a pretty gritty bunch. They're going to get out and compete. They get this on their home field, so I think they put up a fight. But I think you're going to have a few more playmakers and a little bit more offensive firepower for this Fannin County Rebels team. And I don't think they're the type of team, the way that they've had success the last few years, even though the environments and atmosphere at Coosa I hear are really, really elevated this year, a lot different. It's great to see it, the excitement behind that program. Fannin County is a team that can handle those kind of environments. Right. And I think they will. But again, I think Coosa puts up a fight, but at the end of the day, I'm going to pick Fannin County to win the game. We're going to go over here to Grayson and see if he agrees with the old guys or if they think we're just a bunch of old goobers. Let's see.
Yeah, the Coosa, their program, they're really heading in the right direction. Of course, new Coach Jeff Cannon at Coosa, he does an amazing job over there. They got some dudes, Hagen Cawthon, we're going to say his name a whole lot, Harrison East, and their new quarterback, Charlie Cannon. But I will say this about Fannin County. The first 2 years they went into Region 7AA, they completely swept the region. Nobody even came close to them. And then Rockmart came in and dominated everybody. So they really got to see a lot of success the past 2 years until Rockmart came in, but they were still able to make the playoffs. So they do have a pedigree of winning. You mentioned they beat Rabun County. Rabun's been a powerhouse, and for I don't even know how long. They've had a lot of D1 guys come in. Of course, the backup at Georgia, Gunnar Stockton, is a Rabun County alum. So that leads me to believe that Fannin County is going to go in to Coosa, and they're going to beat the Eagles away.
All right, so we all agree.
We do.
We're going to burn through these next two pretty quickly because I look down and we are just scooting through this time. We've got a couple of long interviews later on in the show we'll tell you more about in a couple of moments. But let's talk about the Chattooga Indians. 3-0 start to the season, going to Gordon Central to take on the Warriors team that's having a really good start to the year. So a pretty intriguing matchup. When you look at the series history, though, it's been very lopsided. Chattooga leads at 10-0. They have not played each other the last couple of seasons, so you get this one back on the list. Does this matchup look different this year with Gordon Central playing much better football than we've seen in a while?
I mean, I think it absolutely looks different. I'm going to pick the outcome that I would have picked the past several seasons. I'm going to pick the Chattooga Indians. I won't keep that a secret. I'm just really curious to see how good Roon Gable's squad is. I do think Gordon Central is improved, but I think at this point, Roon Gable's had time to get his team old. They could stay old. He's got some upperclassmen. He's got good leadership, and they've had an impressive start to the season. I think they go on the road and get the win, but that's not a slight at Gordon Central in the least.
All right, Grayson, how about you?
Gordon Central, they're finally able to win a game this season. Of course, they played a few Augusta teams, so they've been able to have a little bit of confidence here in this season. But Chattooga's also had a lot of confidence. One guy in particular, if you look at Max Prep, Zayden Cook, top 5 rusher in the entire nation. That's just ridiculous. So I think if Chattooga's able to run the ball like they can with Zayden Cook every game, I mean, he's averaging like almost 160 rushing yards a game. I mean, I think they'll be able to win this one easy. I think that DJ Fleetwood, he's a deadly target there for Gordon Central, but when you're a top 5 rusher in the nation, I mean, it's just hard for me to root against that, especially in this game.
All right, so 2 picks for Chattooga. We'll see what comes up next. I'm going to also say Chattooga in this game. Zayden Cook, 338 yards, 5 touchdowns, 17 carries in their victory over Mount Zion. They're going to lean on him. There's no doubt about it. Can you stop him? That's going to be the question. Yeah. And if that starts to occur, what else does Chattooga have around him that they can go to and kind of mix things up? You know, we'll at some point we'll probably get some answers to that. Sure. But as long as people can't slow him down, they're going to feed him the rock, see if they can get him in the end zone. I think they'll be able to do that here. So I'm going to go with the Chattooga Indians as well. We agree on that one. Next one's going to be Dade County Wolverines going up to Christian Heritage to play against the Lions. Been there several times. It can be a tough environment for visiting teams. I'm curious to see how everybody in the room sees this one. Let's get through this one kind of quick because we are scooting through this time.
All right, I'll take it. In Dade County, 1-2, but they have close losses to really good teams like Ringgold and Tryon, and then they have the 35-0 win over Lafayette. Christian Heritage is 2-1. I know that they're coming off a win over Pepperell a few weeks ago. I don't know if this is an upset special, but I'm taking Dade County. I just think the Wolverines can go up there and play ball control offense and win.
And we will talk to Grayson about this one.
Yeah, back when I think I've mentioned this a few times whenever we had them on the pick show. But Dade County, the identity of that team is they're going to be sneaky. It doesn't matter what sport they play. They sneaked up on us in basketball, football, whatever the heck you want to name it. They've been able to sneak up on us. So, of course, they almost beat Tryon. I think that's the number one thing you look at when you look at their schedule, almost beating Tryon. So Christian Heritage, they're rolling. Of course, they lost Heritage Catoosa. There's too many Heritages in the state of Georgia. So we're going to go, of course, they kept it close with them, or they got blown out by them. So that just leads me to think that Dade County, I don't care if it's in Dalton. I'm just going to go Dade County here and go ahead and get this show on the road. So
yeah, I'm going to keep it short here. Carter Triplett, quarterback, really excellent quarterback. He's kind of a dual threat guy, but he's really a threat to run. If you can slow his run down, bottle him up, you can have success. Dade County's really well coached. Coach Poston has done a fantastic job with this team. They're a gritty bunch. They will be in good position in this game. So I think Dade County goes up there and gets a win.
All right.
So there you go. We're going to take a break. We're glad you're with us. This is This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. More games to pick, interviews coming up, all kind of stuff going on. We're excited you're with us. We'll be back.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. It's week 5, and right now it's me, Ian Griffin, and Matt Davis here picking games. And this slate, before we move on to our game of the week and our interviews, some of the games we're going to run down. We're going to go Union County at Rockmart. Then we are going to go to East Paulding at Rome, and then we're going to move on to Allatoona and Cedartown. And we're going to go ahead and start out with Union County at Rockmart. And these two teams played in the playoffs last year. Rockmart waxed them 56-14. And one of the things that's interesting now is that they're in the same region. And for me, even though it's week 5, it's crazy. Some of these teams are already starting out region play because we just witnessed some really tough out-of-region games. Rockmart, they opened region play early. They played 2 out-of-region games and immediately moved in to region play. They played Ringgold, and they came off a nail-biter, which some people said was slightly expected. I think Rockmart, they're going to be favored to win this game, and especially since it's at home, I don't think Union County is going to be able to get revenge from last year. I'm going to have to go with the Yellow Jackets at home.
Ian Griffin, how do you say it?
What's the old saying? None of your bees wax. He said they waxed them last season. I think the bees wax the Panthers. That's what's happening here. I don't doubt it for a second. Rockmart's going to win big at home.
Oh, I'm with you. I won't add too much to this one. I think this is pretty cut and dry. I think there's going to be way too much offense from the Rockmart Yellow Jackets. The athleticism of this team, in my mind, there's no way that Union County is going to be able to match this. And what's weird to me is, sometimes you end up, geographically speaking, having some strange regions. And when I was looking at this game, I'm like, this is a region game? But it is. Union County and Blairsville, or Blairsville and Union County, which is where this school is in the region with Rockmart, which seems very odd to me.
That is odd.
It is what it is.
We said the same thing about Fannin County years ago.
It doesn't get much.
true.
It doesn't get much more odd than Trine's region because they got a region game 3 hours away.
Really? Wow.
Manchester and Trine. That is a region game where it is separated by 2 hours and 48 minutes.
That's pretty wild.
That is
it
wild.
Really is. Well, all that to say, I also picked Rockmart in this game. Now we're going to move on to 5A, and we're going to kind of go back in the Wayback Machine a little bit here and have a little classic line. But, Ian, you're a Rome alum. You follow that program. Why don't you start us off with that? Of course, a little something my dad used to say to you.
He sure did.
Every
time. Well, I'll tell you this much. The East Paulding Raiders and Rome Wolves are not strangers.
No.
There's been reclassification, and they've been separated a few times, but not very often. There's no love lost between these two teams. And Coach John Reed knows a thing or two about them as well, since he used to coach there. So, look, Rome is 0-2. They've had a weird start to the season. You had the bus crash that caused them to have to pull out of the Corky Kell. Then they have to travel and play Carrollton. Everybody wants to be shocked by the fact that they lost to Toombs County. I was surprised it happened, but Toombs County is a really, really, really good single-A school that came up to Barron Stadium and jumped out to a lead. Rome wasn't able to come back. They almost did. But Rome, 0-2. I know that's surprising. They get a team in the East Paulding Raiders that are going to come to town. They're undefeated, 3-0, and they're going to bring their A game. This is where Rome takes a stand. It's region play. I feel like this is where their season turns around and they get on a positive trajectory going forward. I like the Wolves to win.
You mentioned the interesting series history here. Rome leads at 12-6. They have won the last 7. And this is an interesting fact, but Coach Reed has never lost to East Paulding while at Rome. Coach Reed never lost to Rome while he was at East Paulding, which is kind of fun to throw out there. And I agree with you, Ian. I think the loss to Toombs County, while it was certainly one of the more attention-grabbing things that we saw last week, you don't have to hit the panic button if you're a Wolf fan here. They've been extremely competitive against two number one teams out of their classification this season. They didn't get the results that they were looking for, but they showed how competitive they can be against some of the best teams in the state. So eventually, that's going to start translating to getting things on track and in order and getting some wins, because you got to remember, you're dealing with one of the best coaching staffs, starting with the head guy, Coach Reed, that you're going to find in the state of Georgia and anywhere really in the country. So they will get these guys where they need to be, but because of everything happened, getting the season started and all that kind of stuff, they may be a little bit behind where they thought they would be at this point in time. And I think that's kind of to be expected given the circumstances. Sure. And plus, they were replacing a four-year starter at quarterback, which they've only had to do a couple of times in their school history. Right. So there's just a lot going on here. But I look for them to start to get things on track here with this game as well. Curious to see if Grayson Atkins sees it the same way as we do.
I'm going to go ahead and throw out the elephant in the room. I don't think anybody suspected that Toombs County was even going to keep it close with Rome. So I was watching a little bit of that at Shrine, and I was like, Toombs County's up 14-0? I mean, I was dumbfounded. Even the people around me were dumbfounded. But, I mean, it's surprising to even say that Rome is 0-2. And then we look on the flip side, East Paulding, they actually whooped up on Hiram, our game of the week, and Paulding County. And the game that kind of put them on the map was that North Paulding game. Nobody had them winning that game, and that's really what put them on the map. Yes, Rome's 0-2. It's surprising to even think about that. East Paulding's undefeated. But this is kind of the perfect test, you could say, for both teams. On East Paulding's side, we get to see if they're legit or not when it comes to region play. You know, of course, in the lower classes, out-of-region play really makes a difference. But in these top classes, it doesn't matter because it's still going by region seating. So we get to see if they're legit. And now we get to see on the other side if Rome can overcome some adversity going into region play and see if they can gain a little bit of confidence. So it's at Barron. I mean, you know, we talk about home field advantage. That's going to be a factor in this game. I think that Barron's going to be rocking for this game because this is number 8 versus number 11 in the state. I think it's going to be rocking, but I think that Coach Reed is going to have these Wolves ready to feed, and I think Rome is going to beat the East Paulding. What are they? The
Raiders.
East Paulding Raiders, yeah. They're going to beat the East Paulding Raiders.
All right. So we all agree on that.
Yeah, we have not had a difference.
That's a shocker. I thought we'd have one or two.
I was hoping so, considering I'm the guy who's behind 2 games.
Well, we still may. It's not over yet. We got to burn through this next one really quick. Alatoona Buccaneers. This is in 7-4A at 7-4A Cedartown Bulldogs, the number 7 team in the state in Class 4A Bulldogs. Ian?
I'll make it real quick. Another opponent, same old story, Cedartown.
I'm going with the Bulldogs. You?
I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna give me Cedartown.
Okay, so we agree through that game as well. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and take a break, and then we're gonna come back and hear from some coaches.
Yeah. This is gonna be a great segment here. It's our game of the week between Cass and Hiram. Hiram traveling to Cass. We will hear which coach are we hearing from first?
Coach Gates.
Yeah, we're going to have Coach Steve Gates of the Cass Colonels, followed by Coach Pete Fominaya of the Hiram Hornets. Great interview. Stay tuned.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, everybody. We are glad to have you with us here on the program, wherever you're listening or watching from. And we're also glad to have Coach Steve Gates, of course, the head coach of the Cass Colonels football team and getting ready, in his 5th season, rather. And Coach Gates, thank you so much for giving us some time today. We're looking forward to chatting with you about Cass football.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, fellas.
All right, we'll just go ahead and launch in. Of course, the last 3 seasons have been playoff seasons for you. Last year, quarterfinal appearance in the playoffs. You have built a consistent program, so we want to know kind of how the sausage is made. What's your process for building this kind of sustained success, Coach?
Expectations. That's all it is. It's just people can talk about changing the culture and changing this and bringing these coaches on and having these players, and it's just expectations, and it's expectations from the very top, all the way down to managers and trainers, water boys, ball boys. It doesn't matter. It's just holding everybody to a standard that they've never been held to before, including myself. So it's, I kind of joke with my principal about it is he'll never have to fire me because I'll quit before he fires me, because my expectations for myself are beyond extreme. So as long as I continue to hold myself to expectations that are far out there, then I feel good about coming to work every day and holding everybody else around here to the same expectations. And you just maximize what you got, and that's what we've done here. And it's been a fun 4.5 years, and I look forward to many more.
Yeah, Coach, I remember talking with you when you first took the job and the excitement that you had coming over and taking over this program, a program that had not enjoyed a lot of wins for a lot of years before you came in and turned things around. So now that you've had this success that Matt mentioned, talk about this season so far. You rolled in the first 3 games. Last year you played a really, really tough North Cobb team. How does playing that kind of team sharpen you for region play in a big rivalry matchup against Hiram?
Just a good mix of teams. All 4 of the teams we've played so far were ranked in the top 10 in their respective classifications, so they were good football teams. But in reality, what we did to the 3 previous teams that were playoff teams last year and ranked in the top 10 is what North Cobb did to us Friday night. Same exact scenario, just reversed. North Cobb's a top 10 6A team, and the other teams that we played were 3 and 2A top 10 teams, and we're a 4A. So everything that happened, in my opinion, kind of should have happened, and I do that for a reason. I try to play a variety of teams, tough, hard-nosed, well-coached, and that's what we did. All the teams on our schedule, I think 8 of the 10 were playoff teams last year. The only 2 that aren't playoff teams are the 2 out of our region, if I'm not mistaken. So that's just something I enjoy doing. I was in the business world and somewhat successful, and when I got into coaching and decided I want to be a head coach one day, I just told myself I never, not that I don't want to go undefeated 10-0, but I never want to go 10-1. To me, 10-1 is a failure. That means you played a patsy schedule and you got beaten round 1 of the playoffs. That's just my opinion. People can like it or not like it, too bad. But that's something I'll never want to do. So as long as I can get these kids prepared during the season in non-region games and take some punches and learn how to, it's what I tell our kids. It's easy to walk to the parking lot after you beat somebody 42-0. How are you going to walk to the parking lot when you get beat 42-0? You're going to point fingers and blame and palms up and have bad attitudes and I should have been playing this and I should have been playing that. Or are you going to, suck it up and come back Monday and fight and practice and all that type of stuff? So that's just my philosophy, and knock on wood, so far it's working.
We've got Coach Steve Gates with us, head coach of the Cass Colonels, here for this particular segment of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. And, Coach, in a preseason interview with V3, you mentioned that the class of 2024 was really able to buy into the program over the last several years. So you talked about expectations. What is your message to these players as far as expectations are concerned? What are the key expectations for you have on this team? So I guess I'm just asking you to elaborate specifically. What's your highest expectation expectations are? What categories do you look at the most?
In the classroom and the weight room, those two. You do right in those, and we'll be successful. We got an incredible coaching staff. We got great facilities. We got a great administration. So if the kids will buy in the classroom and the weight room, we'll be successful. And they do. And the perfect example I could give you was Friday night. Is I explained to these kids that North Cobb is different, and they didn't understand that. And the reason I know that is I was at North Cobb for 7 years. It's just different. It's a bigger classification. Where I learned all my stuff, most of my stuff in the weight room was with Coach Queen at North Cobb. They're an extremely physical football team. And so what our kids witnessed firsthand physically Friday night is what I've implemented here and what we're starting to gain here. So it was great data for me to be able to go back and tell the kids that, I'm not the nicest guy in the weight room, and they all shook their heads, because I kind of asked them that. This is after the game at Friday night. I said, you realize that I can be kind of not so nice in the weight room, right? And they all shook their heads. And I gave a couple more questions to them, and they all shook their heads. And I said, and I pointed to kind of North Cobb sideline. I said, and that's why. That's where y'all want to get to that physicality. That's where we got to go, those expectations. So they kind of full circled, maybe resonated with some of them that's why I'm not so nice in the weight room and hold them to a higher standard than just any old everyday football team. So that's kind of the best example of expectations that I could give is firsthand real life 2.5, 3 days ago, 4 days ago now, I guess.
Well, Coach, last year's senior class, the first one to be with you, throughout their time at Cass. You graduated some really unbelievable athletes last year that went on to play D1, and I'm sure a lot of other players that are playing college ball now. And the reaction for people who don't see you week in, week out is probably, oh well, there went that winning culture. They just walked out the door. But you are reloaded. Talk about some of the players that are standing out this year that maybe have D1 offers, and some of the guys that people might not know about.
Yeah, and we heard that all off season. I even heard it from some of our coaches, that are in our region, like, oh yeah, it looks like you're going to be down this year, Coach Gates. And so the perception is we're down because we lost so many good football players, and I just kind of chuckled because I knew what type of guys we had in the locker room, in the weight room coming back, that this, as good as the Devons and Socovies were, this is a better football team. Not necessarily better football players, but this is a better football team. And we've already shown that with, I think Brody has thrown a touchdown pass to 6, maybe 7 different receivers and through 3 or 4 games. And last year we had 3 guys total catch touchdown passes. So just that's an example of how open we are, and we, opponents just can't key on 1 or 2 guys throughout a game plan. So we're more spread out. And yeah, I miss those guys. I talk to them about every other day and love them to death. But we got our new guys. We got these kids aren't filling Sokovia and Devon's shoes. They've brought their own pair of shoes. And it's going to be fun over the next several years. We do got a bunch of good young kids. Numbers aren't where I want them, but that's, I can't really control that. The kid's going to play football or he's not going to play football. So, but the kids that are playing football are some really good kids. We've got a really good young quarterback named Noah Rogers that's coming up, and he'll literally take over for Brody when it's time. So there's some good kids in the pipeline that will keep this thing running.
Coach, one of the things that you referenced earlier in terms of your scheduling was to schedule teams that challenge you in different ways, physically, mentally, so on and so forth. So let's talk about Hiram specifically in that context. What are your thoughts on this Hiram Hornets team and the challenges that they present specifically?
Coach Fominaya does an incredible job of getting his kids prepared. They're always well coached. They run specific offense that's somewhat a old school wing tee hybrid out of shotgun. Jeff Heron brought that when he was at Camden County. He kind of merged a spread with the wing tee, and a lot of guys have taken hold of that, and that's kind of what Hiram runs. It's very difficult to defend, and he's loaded with athletes, which is why he's always in the mix in the playoffs and beating teams, possibly that he shouldn't beat and whatnot, because they're very hard to defend. So he does a great job in that aspect of it. Defensively, they're always flying around the football field. Hiram's just always going to have good athletes. They're well coached, and Pete does a great job with it. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him and what he does with that program.
Excellent, Coach. As we wind down our conversation, we've got one final question for you, and we want to flip the script back over to your Colonels and get some insights on the keys to the game. What do you have to do? What do your guys have to focus on and do right to get the W? And what does it mean to have this game in front of your home crowd?
Yeah, we're Friday night's loss to North Cobb. We hadn't lost at the Doug, somebody told me, since like the fourth week of 2002. So we were going on almost a 2-year streak of not losing a home game until North Cobb, beat us to a pulp the other night. So we defend the Doug. The kids love playing at home. Keys to the game would be to see how we respond after Friday night's loss, if the kids can shut the chapter on that book and move on, or if that's going to dwell. Last year, when Cartersville beat us, it took a toll on us for a couple weeks mentally. So we'll see if we've grown and matured and learned from that and not let it allow us. We already practiced this morning, and the kids had a great practice this morning. So we're prepared. We're healthy. We'll just see. It's a region game. It's a tough region game. Normally, the last, 3 out of the last 4 years, it's come down to us and Hiram for that 3rd or 4th seed, 4th and 5th seed. So it's as big as it gets. It's a huge region game tonight. It's not one of those that, we hope to win or, this is big. This is big.
Well, we're excited to take it in and wish you the best of luck on Friday night. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Absolutely. I appreciate what you guys do for high school football.
It's a pleasure, Coach. And that wraps up our conversation with Coach Steve Gates from the Cass Colonels, taking on Hiram this weekend. We're going to take a break. This is This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We'll return after a word from our sponsor, Riverside Auto Group.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
And welcome back to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We have with us the Hiram Hornets head coach, Pete Fominaya, and are excited to talk to him about a big game going down at Cass High School this Friday. How are you, Coach?
Doing well, sir. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having the time. I want to start, Coach, talking about your road to Hiram. You're entering your 7th season there, but I was looking at the story of how you came to Paulding County to coach the Hornets. You went back to your alma mater, built a heck of a program there, and then made the decision to move up here to this neck of the woods. So tell us about your road to Hiram.
Well, yes, sir. I'm born and raised in South Florida, in a little town called Naples, which is about 2 hours south of Tampa. And one of my best friends moved up to Georgia and started coaching in Cobb County. And my wife and I visited him up here just about every year and just really fell in love with the area. And one day that same friend calls me and says, hey, there's an opening at Hiram. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know where Hiram was. I had to kind of look it up on a map just to kind of see where the location was. And, we ended up speaking with the athletic director and was given the opportunity to come up here and coach the Hornets. And we're going to year 7 and really excited about the future here.
Excellent. Well, Coach, you've had some really great success, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later. As you've built this program, opening the season this year, you've played some really, really tough opponents these past few weeks in East Side, Central Carroll, East Paulding. How do those games against those tough opponents help you as you move forward and move into region play against a familiar opponent like Cass?
Well, scheduling in Georgia is handled by the head coach. And the hard part about when you win the way we did last season, you can't find a whole lot of people that want to play you. So you have to play a lot of the tougher opponents out there on the market. And when we had an opportunity to kind of put this schedule together, we knew we fell 1 point short of winning the region championship last year. So we ended up losing to Cartersville by a point. We missed an extra point at the end of the game. And we knew we had to kind of take the next step as a program. And for us, that was, to get pushed in our non-region schedule. The three opponents that we've lost to are combined 10-1, and all of them are ranked in the top 10 in their classification. We feel like we really got a chance to figure out what we're good at, what we need to improve on. And even though we've got a young team, I've seen us get better every single week.
We've got Coach Fominaya with us here from Hiram, featured as our Game of the Week, interviewing both coaches. And, Coach, of course, we referenced this is your 7th season, and when you look at the schedules from the historian site, you notice the progression, obviously last year picking up those 9 wins and just having a great season. So, obviously, you've had a lot of talented guys as a part of your program and certainly have built a winning program. So who are some of the guys that have really stepped up this year and some of the guys that you look to for leadership on this particular squad?
Well, we knew it was going to be a relatively young team. We had 10 guys who went on to go play college football for last year's roster, including 5 guys that were Power 5. So we knew that we were going to have to fill some big holes. We did have a couple guys returning that have been key players for us. Caden Hamilton had over 2,000 yards all-purpose last year for us, and I think 25 touchdowns. He is number 1 for us. He leads us in rushing at the moment. Then you have Deshaun Williams, which is kind of our 1-2 punch in the backfield. He returns with almost 1,000 yards all-purpose last year, and he's had a really good season for us to start out with. Defensively, we're led by our middle linebacker, Jason Guybe. He was an all-region player for us last season, had over 100 tackles, and he's had a good season. Then Josiah Pope plays linebacker for us as well. He's number 28. He's currently committed to the Ivy Leagues to go to Yale, and he's had a good start of the season for us as well.
Excellent, Coach. A few years ago, I think the win that kind of opened everybody's eyes to what you had built at Hiram was that win over Calhoun, and now you've had sustained success. So the Hornets aren't sneaking up on anybody anymore. You mentioned that with scheduling and how difficult that is once you start winning. How have you managed, helping your kids learn how to handle success?
Well, the biggest thing for us is we tried to build this from the ground up. So we've established a culture in our youth and feeder program, and then that trickles up into the 9th grade and the 10th grade. And for us, we really try to attack the day. I think young people really need to have goals, and they need to be driven by those goals so they can find purpose in the work every day. Because football is different from other sports. There's so much preparation, and there's very little competition opportunities. So for us, it's really about attacking the day and understanding that every senior class has to leave a legacy, and that every senior class is working towards a goal. So we really focused on this senior class. And even though they're not big in numbers, we've got less than 20 seniors. I feel like this group is motivated to get back on track and to move forward successfully into the region play.
Coach, obviously, big game coming up. You referenced the tough schedule and things of that nature. Obviously, this is a team that kind of mirrors yours in terms of, building that program and finding success and things of that nature. So I would imagine along with that the atmosphere and the environment has gotten tougher when you have that kind of success playing at Cass. So I know this is a road game for you. So how do you handle that sort of thing as far as getting your team ready for a tough environment, atmosphere, that sort of thing, and preparing for a tough matchup like this mentally?
So, first and foremost, I have the utmost respect for Coach Gates and what he's built up there. He was a an assistant at Kell, and Kell was in our region. So, I've known Coach Gates ever since I've gotten to Georgia, and really impressed with the job that he's done up there. I think Hiram Cass is as good as a rivalry game inside of our region as there is. Our game typically dictates who's going to the playoffs, and the 2 years they beat us, we got in, and then the years we've beaten them, we've had the opportunities to get in, so even though it's first region game, like we're treating it like a playoff game at our place. And there's a lot of stakes that ride on this game. So as we go into this game, they've done such a good job of developing those players in that system. Defensively, they're doing a really good job. Up to last week, they were one of the best defenses in the state. And then offensively, they've got so many weapons. I mean, when you have 2 Division I offensive linemen and a Division I quarterback and plenty of skilled guys to kind of complement those 3 guys, it's a real challenge to prepare for, but there's so much familiarity between our 2 programs that I think it's going to be a great contest.
Excellent, Coach. Yeah, you don't get many breaks in your region. It's a
right.
buzzsaw. So let's talk about your roster a little bit. Looking at the roster, you got a lot of seniors. Talk about the leadership that you have on their team and how that helps you going into a big matchup like this.
Yeah, so we were fortunate to have a great group of seniors last year, and which these junior, the current seniors could learn from. And those seniors were kind of, last year's class was the foundation of us building forward. We played a lot of those guys as sophomores and juniors, which led to the success we had a year ago. But a core group of these seniors right now also got to play in that group. So on the offensive line, we have Torian Edge, who's a captain for us and a 2-year starter, and has really been part of the success we've had in the run game. In the secondary, Anthony Pittman has kind of been a do-it-all, selfless team player for us. He came in as a quarterback, moved to safety for us. He's a long snapper as well. And he's been really critical in building a kind of a blue-collar, whatever-it-takes mentality for us. And he really does a good job, and he's a quarterback of our defense. So, we've got the right mix of guys who have been battle-tested now early on in this season, and they've seen the success in the past of what it takes to win. So they've really focused in and locked in this weekend, and we feel like this is a game where we can take the right step forward.
Coach, one final question for you. And first, I just want to say we really appreciate your time. We've enjoyed talking to you here about your team and this exciting matchup coming up this weekend. But the final question is to kind of tie everything together. What boxes do the Hiram Hornets need to check this weekend to come out with a victory in this matchup?
Well, for us, we've had some penalties, and I call stupid penalties any penalties that happen pre-snap and post-snap. So if you have a false start or if you have, any kind of penalty before that, an alignment situation, or a post-snap penalty, which can be anything from excessive celebration or any kind of personal foul. So we've really focused on eliminating the stupid penalties this week and really cleaning those up, which comes a lot of times with young teams. And then for us, we're a primarily run team, so we've got to go out there and run the ball effectively and take the chances down the field with our play-action pass. And then defensively for us, they do such a good job spreading the ball around. We've got to do a great job of getting lined up and tackling when we have the opportunity. And, really trying to withstand or minimize the explosive plays because they just do such a great job. So for us, we're going to go out there and get lined up, and if we can control our effort and go out there and play with great technique, I feel confident that we'll have success this week.
Thank you, Coach. We appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
All right, that's going to put a wrap on our conversation with Coach Fominaya from Hiram Hornets. Big matchup coming up this weekend against Cass. Super excited about it. It's going to be great.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break here on This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor, Riverside Auto Group.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
Well, our time is coming rapidly to a close. Only one thing left to do, and that is to make our picks here for what you just heard about, our game of the week. It is the Cass Colonels hosting the Hiram Hornets. And one prediction is that is going to be one heck of an atmosphere and a great football game. But, Ian, who do you think comes out on top?
Yeah, I know you look at the records, you think, oh, Hiram's 1-3. Cass is 3-1. Throw that out the window right now. They both played great competition. They know each other. They've competed against each other for playoff spots. This is going to be a barn burner. I won't be surprised if it goes either way, but I'm going to take the home team here. Cass wins.
All right. Do you see it the same way, Grayson?
You know, that Hiram schedule, buzzsaw, their coach even mentioned, combined 10-1. And the only team that has a loss in there is Central Carrollton, and they lost to an out-of-state opponent in Oxford, who's one of the top teams in 7A. In Alabama, both teams, they're going to be hungry. Of course, the Hiram's record shows it. Cass, they just came off a big loss, but I think that Cass is going to defend the Doug at home.
All right, and I get the last word here, folks. This one was tough. I honestly just wish I could, right here on the show, flip a coin, but we always pick these as we're going into the games, so it's already said and done. But at the end of the day, I could see this one going either way. Okay. But in that case, I usually am going to go with the home team. So that's the strategy I take as well. I'm picking Cass, but this one won't surprise me with either team coming out ahead. But I think the fans are really in for a treat. This is going to be fun. And I really enjoyed talking to both coaches. I think I've talked with you to Coach Gates before maybe. But just to talk to those guys, I love their approach to the game and just making sure that they expect excellence and the expectations they have for the kids. Because no doubt they come out better football players and people. I love that. It's awesome. Love what they had to say.
Two fantastic coaches that have a great amount of respect for each other with talented football teams. That's going to make for a heck of a clash on Friday night. Won't be surprised if it goes either way. But the one thing we do know, I'll still be in last place when we do this again next week.
We pick the same on every game. Unbelievable. Well, that puts a wrap on this edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. I want to thank the panel once again. Grayson Atkins, intern for WLAQ and V3. Ian Griffin of V3 and also a part of WLAQ Sports. I'm Matt Davis for you out there and the listening and viewing audience. We appreciate you and we'll bid you adieu until next week. Hope your team wins this weekend and just hope you have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe and we'll talk to you next week on another edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football.
This has been another edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, brought to you by Riverside Auto Group and produced by WLAQ Sports. We appreciate you tuning in and invite you to tune in again next week. Please like, share, and subscribe.